Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, our guest today is Kevin Farr. Kevin Farr is a health and wellness coach in Costa Rica, sunny, gorgeous Costa Rica. You can find out more about Kevin Farr and his wonderful work at two websites, lovealchemyscience.com and also lyoscenter.com. And I'm going to spell that second one for you, Lyos center.com. Welcome, Kevin Farr.
Thank you for having me.
So,
Great to be here.
Kevin Farr, what exactly is the Lyos Center?
Sure. Lyos is a not-for-profit created by a veteran, myself. I'm a trauma survivor, addiction survivor, and many other things, and a plant medicine carrier. And we started it about 5 years ago to specifically work with at-risk populations in the veterans community, the addiction community, the trauma and sexual abuse survivor community. So it's a not-for-profit that specifically focuses on 12-step trauma-informed plant medicine work. And that's the not-for-profit.
I love that. So 12-step trauma-informed plant medicine work, all right? And your second website is lovealchemyscience.com. What is lovealchemyscience.com?
Love Alchemy, that's my life. That is my for-profit playground where I do health and wellness coaching. There's some alchemical work that I do with phytochemicals for inflammation, healing, pain, trauma, also just performance. I'm also a high-performing athlete, so there's stuff that I work with that's for performance. And there's training that I do. So my clients are either come from similar backgrounds, the trauma background, or they come from the high performance athletic background where they've had some pain and injury, or they also come from the business community. And one of my many roles in life is I was once a management consultant in C-suite, high powered business consulting. So I have clients that come from that background as well. The common thing with all of them in coming to Love Alchemy Science is they're looking for tools to go through major life change, and they're looking for strategies for ways to innovate their life out of pain, discomfort, suffering, addiction, confusion, vagueness, chaos, all the things that come along with being dissatisfied, anxious, depressed, and really wanting to live a different way.
Okay, fabulous. Now, Kevin Farr, I know that you come to this work from your own personal experience. Would you mind sort of summarizing for us the trauma and addiction that you have pulled yourself out of yourself?
You know, it's funny. I used to say and advocate that I did it myself, and then I had a really good sponsor really mess with me in a series of questions about how I got sober off of opiates and opioids. And so I've come to learn slowly and gradually higher power, whatever one wants to define that as. For me, that is nature. That is an intelligent, omnipotent, conscious being that is amoral, but also self-organizes on our behalf. And what that nature did for me was help me, one, decide to have the willingness to kick severe drug, alcohol addiction, then start looking at family of origin trauma, which really opened up that I grew up in an alcoholic and dysfunctional home with a high degree of violence. Enable me to start looking at the life of crime that I started very, very young. That carried well up into my 20s, which landed me in every institution you could think of, from mental institutions to jail to prison. And at the end of that, that's where I landed with severe drug addiction. So underneath all of that really is just the addiction to chaos and instability, and to dysfunction. And so what has enabled me to grow through that has been really good therapists that are trained in trauma, really, really good 12-step support community, and work with plant medicine so that I have a way to help regulate my nervous system. And then what that taught me, and combined with my background in athletics and the creative background that I have, is how to ultimately work with plants and food and my spiritual practice as a way to nurture, heal, and love myself, learn to love myself in ways that the way that I was raised could never teach me. And so that's what's enabled me to get to be the man that I am today, which is a deeply flawed human being that really loves life, has a sense of self-worth, has a lot of forgiveness for the insanity that I've come from, and a really an amazing community, an amazing job that I get to show up and be of service in both sides of the work that I do, whether it's for profit or not for profit.
So that is fabulous. And thank you so much for sharing your personal story, and congratulations on how far you have come with natural healing. Now,
Yes.
so the Lyos Center, you said, is a 12-step trauma-informed plant medicine organization. So many of us have heard about the 12 steps. What are the 12 steps? And can you share with those? Let's start with that. What are the 12 steps? And you don't have to, like, if you leave, I know I can't name them all off the top of my head without missing a few, but what are the 12 steps?
Yeah, so I think the best way to summarize this is that the 12 steps are literally steps that we take to come into conscious contact with higher power. And that's probably the easiest summary that I can give to what 12-step work is. And then at a more practical level, it's a toolbox for going through this type of process. I have no idea what I'm doing and I'm scared. I need help. Here are the things that I have done that I'm responsible for. Here are the things that have been done to me. Here's how I'm going to make amends for it. And here's how I'm going to carry the message. Here's how I'm going to carry the message forward after going through this process. So it's a really practical toolbox that for many of us who don't grow up with an understanding of how to take care of ourselves, how to be in community with others, how to think in really sane, loving, collaborative ways, it's a toolbox for sane living. What's really unique about 12-step is that at a much more practical level, underneath taking really healthy action steps, is that our physiology and neurology changes. Our nervous systems change. Our actual neural network in our brain changes because our belief systems are changing. Our ability to self-regulate our nervous system changes. Our ability to self-care, which is take care of my mind, my body, my spirit, these things change. So our bodies change, our ability to heal, not just at a spiritual or psychological level from trauma, but physically our bodies start to change because we love ourselves in different ways. So it's like I can go from the very high spiritual level, like conscious contact with higher power, to 12-step is like, all right, some practical ways to like live life so that we do sane things. And underneath it's like actually change the way that our bodies work, so that we can feel more joy in being in the spacesuit of whoever we are, and really live out a life that we love. You know?
Great explanation. Now, as you know, Kevin Farr, there are 12-step programs literally all over the world to empower people to get over pretty much every kind of addiction you could name. At the Lyos Center, you integrate plant medicine. So what plant medicines do you all use at the Lyos Center, and how do you find them helpful in empowering people to overcome addictions?
Yeah, wow, that's a powerful question. So I think the first level that I want to start with is defining addiction, and then why the plants that we work with, why our protocol, and what is the role of 12-step in that. So first, one of the definitions that I really enjoy is by a neuroscientist that says, addiction is anything that narrows our ability to enjoy, identify pleasure and enjoy life. It narrows that possibility space, right? And so I like that description, because addiction is something that, if you're behind the scenes in 12-step, you hear a lot of us talk about the fact that like everybody has addictions, like compulsive thoughts, anything that we repeat, right, is by definition an addiction. It just so happens that the substance abuse community and the historicity of addiction has really narrowed it down to like an exogenous material, a substance, That's what an addict is. And then a lot of people debate whether like addiction is real and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, the thing is, like, if we get really honest with ourselves about our thinking patterns and our behaviors, and we spend a lot of time in contemplation, what we will start to notice is that we have thoughts that appear and actions that happen. Right? And depending on how one wants to believe that they have agency in life and like how much they control are, I don't know about you, but I definitely know that I have no idea where thoughts come from. And I can assume that I understand how I take action, but I don't really know how that happens either. I see nature and actions happening all over through birds and flowers and trees and all these things happening of which I'm not in control of. So if I look at like my mental model as thoughts arise, action to be taken, I can look at that and say there are flawed types of thinking that I have that can cause me to take action that can harm myself or other people. And that can be really benign things like I withhold information so I don't develop an intimate connection with a person. So I miss an opportunity to build bonds that ultimately harms my ability to have safe, loving connection. And that limits the other person's ability to get to know me. That can become a compulsion and addiction that becomes so normal, we don't even pay attention to the fact that we isolate and we don't have vulnerable connection with other people. So at Lyos, what we look at is that type of description of addiction. That addiction is compulsive types of thinking connected to behaviors that don't give us the result that we're looking for in life. It just so happens that those of us that were founders of Lyos, we have a really deep understanding of a certain population, right? I'm a sexual abuse survivor. I've been involved in crime, and I've recovered from a lot of abuse, mental addictions, all kinds of just insane thinking. Other founders, like a vet, seen a lot of death, and we can imagine what that comes with being a soldier. And so we're like, okay, our population, like, what are they really dealing with in terms of an addiction? It's like addiction to fear, adrenaline, chaos, dysfunction, low self-worth. This is like the leveling ground for trauma. So when we look at that, say, okay, what are some of the most effective tools for dealing with that type of trauma? And so the plant that I ended up working with was not what I assumed. Honestly, like, Lyos existed in a stealth mode, and we were practicing things, and there's different doctors that are involved in our groups, and we have pharmacologists. There's a lot of science mixed with the spiritual side, and a lot of understanding of how to help people prepare for a spiritual ceremony, go through it, and then integrate afterwards. And it was really through my own trauma, my own experience of trying to work with my nervous system that I met Iboga, and I met that tree root. And what I saw and experienced was the most efficient physiological, neurological, and spiritual change with the highest probability of sustained behavior change afterwards. And given that I already had a lot of training in plants and a lot of training in 12-step and a lot of training in therapy, and I had naturally created a system for myself that bookended my medicine work with therapists and 12-step, it was very natural that I brought that into Lyos. And when I met Iboga and I started working with Global Nurture Project, what I saw was...
And Kevin Farr, for our audience, and I'm going to interrupt so that our audience can follow you, what is Iboga?
Iboga is a shrub that grows naturally all over the basin in Africa. There are many different species of it. They contain different alkaloids that act on different parts of the body. It is widely known throughout the world for an extract from it called Ibogaine, which is widely used in the addiction recovery community because the scientific community has a lot of theories about that particular alkaloid. We work with the plant in its natural state. We believe that the spirit of the plant and the communing with it is a spiritual process, even if we're dealing with mental health issues, physical health issues, neurological. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's a spiritual process. So we work with the whole plant. That means all the alkaloids and all the phytochemicals are available, and it's a completely different way of working with nature than, say, extracting one alkaloid and then providing that in a concentrated form in, say, a more medicalized environment.
Thank you for sharing. And with that, let's take a break and listen to one of our commercial sponsors here at UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author, and we're interviewing Kevin Farr about how he integrates Iboga with 12 steps for recovery from addiction and trauma. Kevin Farr. So we've talked about the 12 steps. I love your explanation of it. And I love your explanation also of Iboga. Why did you begin to integrate Iboga with 12-step the 12-step process to empower people to overcome addiction and trauma?
Yeah, I love this question, and what I experienced in my personal journey, uh, and then getting involved in the 12-step community and deeper in the spiritual community and working with different plant medicines. What I noticed is this, I'm saying this out loud. It's like one thing when I say this behind closed doors, but this is like the first time I think I'm going to say this out loud in recording. I see people like grow in amazing ways inside of 12 step. And I see people grow in amazing ways inside of the therapeutic models. And I've seen people grow in amazing and profound ways in plant medicine. I've also seen across all three of those domains, people get stuck. And the stuckness is usually tied to types of flawed thinking in one's belief system and logic that limits one's ability to love oneself completely, and then make clear choices about what it's like to live a life based on trust and surrender to nature, trust and to surrender to the fact that we are not in control, and trust and surrender into whatever our beautiful natural gifts are that enable us to live a life that we feel really fulfilled with. And it was not like I didn't come to this understanding because I sought it out. It was reflected back to me through the practitioners that I was working with. I didn't consciously think for myself, like when I was coming out of it, and I was an atheist. I didn't go to plant medicine because I was like, I have a deep, profound desire to grow spiritually. It was like I was an atheist, and I'm like, and I recognized it. I was like, really, my head was just super fucked up, and I wouldn't even have words to describe how. Sorry about that.
Yeah, thank you. We're specifically required and asked not to swear, so it's not my role. Thank you for respecting UK Health Radio. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, to believe, yeah. It was really challenging for me to come to terms with the effect of dysfunction and disease in my own life. So when I set up this process of therapy, plant medicine, and eventually 12-step, it wasn't conscious. It was like I needed help. I needed a place to go to remind me that I am part of the universe. That happened inside of plant medicine. It gave me insights. The therapy enabled me to integrate. 12-step gave me tools for day-to-day living. I never thought about doing service. I never thought about how I would share this. It was literally survival for myself. Like, I'm struggling, I need to survive. And these tools were amazing. It was reflected back to me later that I should share those tools. That seemed very scary and foreign to me. So at that time, what I started then looking at is connecting with other people in community. And I started observing, like, where does everybody get stuck? How, if we're going to be of service, how are we going to be of service? And what tools would we actually share back with people? And through the discussion with the other founders and looking at our different skill sets, what we looked at was that there needs to be an intervention when we're spiraling out and bottoming out in life. There's a point at which we hit rock bottom and we say, like, I need help. That's the intervention moment. So 12-step on its own can be an intervention, but you can't force that on people. They have to be willing to go into the rooms, right? And therapy, you can't make someone go into therapy. They have to be willing to talk, right? And that process can be very slow to develop intimacy and all this and connection and sharing. And then there's plant medicine. And when we're willing to sit in plant medicine and we say we're willing to look at our stuff, it can be very efficient in giving us clarity over where we're at in our life. How much do we love ourselves? What our sense of connection is in community, our fear of death, our understanding of being connected to an intelligent universe. This can all come to the surface very quickly inside of a medicine ceremony. So what that helped me understand in talking with everybody in community is that what's really needed for a lot of us that are dealing with complex PTSD and severe trauma is that we need an intervention, one, to wake us up from the trauma. Two, we need safe people to speak about our trauma with that understand what we're going through emotionally, behaviorally, physiologically, neurologically. And then we need tools to make sustained behavior change. It doesn't matter how many insights we have in ceremony or in therapy. If we can't practice that day to day, our behavior doesn't change. So our experience of life doesn't change. So what we started learning and practicing and experimenting with was, what are the right pre-care tools for an intervention? How do you get somebody ready for that when they're willing for change? How do you set that up and help them? Two, what does a ceremony space look like, and what's the right plants to work with? And this is how we got to Iboga. And three, what's the right aftercare so that when someone comes out of that type of really powerful experience that's life-changing, and for a lot of people, they're coming into awareness when they're in an Iboga ceremony that they have an addiction. We may know this as practitioners by profiling them and doing a lot of work with them ahead of time, but they may be coming in and becoming aware in the ceremony, oh my goodness, I have this addiction. So then there's the tools that are needed afterwards. What type of practitioners would we connect them with? How do we help them with their diet? What type of therapist might they need? Do they need somatic body work? And then 12-step tools. So this is what we learned over years and years of practice of how to organize that type of personal care for people so that they can come out the other end of that type of experience and go, wow, that's intense. I'm scared, but I have some tools and a support system.
So Kevin Farr, I know that you're in the mountains of Costa Rica. Are there other centers and organizations that integrate the 12-step process with Iboga, to your knowledge?
As far as we know, there's 12-step work in the Ibogaine clinics. If you go there to detox, right, that's set up more like a conventional detox center. So 12-step will be part of that process. As far as we know, yes, there are other Iboga centers that range from very strict Bui-Twi to more kind of like modern Bui-Twi, to like Bui-Twi mixed with psychology. The only non-Bui-Twi group in the country is Global Nurture Project Iboga Therapy, and that's the group that I'm trained within, and we are what I like to call a mixed modality modern protocol for people coming from developed societies with specific health and wellness issues that are specific to those cultures. So as far as we know, we are the only 12-step focused spiritual work with Iboga that we know of. That doesn't mean that it doesn't exist other places in the world. In general, I can say, and having been in the medicine community for almost a decade, the support for sexual abuse survivors, trauma survivors, veterans, and addicts is severely lacking. And not because people aren't well intentioned, it's just like people aren't trained for it. They don't have any experience with it. And in a lot of indigenous communities where they're using indigenous rights, they don't understand that part of our culture. So the support, it's like, cool, you drink medicine and like you're on your own, and people spin out. They go back to whatever country they've come from. They're going back to London. They're going back to Australia. They're going back to the United States. They're going back to Canada, and they're going to have a really difficult time making sense of what happened. So
Kevin Farr. So for the past 8 years, I've done the medical intuitive readings for Darren McBratney for everyone going to the Global Nurture Project. So before they even get there, they send me a photograph and fill out a form, and whatever their challenges are, I do a medical intuitive reading. Now, Kevin Farr, you mentioned that in your experience, one of the common challenges in people who suffer from addictions is low self-esteem. In your opinion and your experience, how does the plant medicine Iboga empower people to love ourselves more deeply? What's so special about Iboga for empowering self-love?
Yeah, great question. It's the reflection of oneself, and that I find is one of the most difficult things about that medicine is that we look at the inside of our mind for 12, 14, 16, 18, 24 hours, and that can be extremely empowering, and also like a like moment. And what's really unique about that medicine is that it activates parts of the brain that are very much like how we dream. And so it's like kind of like having an awaking dream. The visions that come through are distinctly different from every other psychedelic on the planet. The visions in Iboga are more like a hologram of real life. These aren't like distorted wavy perceptions. Like there's no like, what am I looking at? It's like, no, it's very clear what you're seeing, right? So when people get a look at their life from that perspective, and their nervous system is regulated, because it's really bizarre in that it's both a stimulant at the same time as it's a central nervous system regulator. It's a very bizarre plant, and it has all these effects on the circulation in the body, and it has and parts of the brain that it lights up. And so there's a lot of mystery around how it could be acting on all these different parts of the body. But what it looks like for all of us is that the body is able to self-regulate while looking at a lot of trauma. The thing with self-love and self-care is being able to bear witness and say, I have been a victim. I'm no longer a victim. Here's how I can take care of myself to start to learn and grow. Iboga is bizarre in its prescriptiveness for people in terms of its ability to give people clarity, not only over what happened in their life, but what their life looks like going forward in very practical terms. It'll tell people things about diet, jobs, relationships. It's really bizarre. And what I can share about this is that everybody, like our brains record everything, and if we think about the amount of cells inside the body self-organizing on our behalf, there's a deep intuition at this cellular atomic level that's collaborating to keep us healthy. So when we see in Iboga is the body's natural desire to take care of itself and to make sane, healthy, loving decisions. A lot of times for people, that can be the first time that they're seeing that they're seeing their trauma, and they're also seeing empathy, compassion, understanding, clarity about their life. That can become a remembrance of, oh, wow, wait, I do love myself, and these things did happen to me. It doesn't mean that I'm a bad person, but these things happened, and I also can take different decisions and choices into account to live a different life. It can be extremely empowering to start to remember that we have that ability to interact with life in that way. So people can come out of ceremony and go, okay, wow, yeah, that's some really crazy stuff I looked at. And like, I have some major life changes to make. And wow, do I feel optimistic about my capacity and ability to make these changes.
So Kevin Farr, as you know, there's different kinds of plant medicine. So many people are more familiar with ayahuasca or psilocybin mushrooms. Why do you think Iboga, and specifically the plant medicine Iboga, as opposed to the medicine, the derivative ibogaine that's used in medical clinics, why do you think the plant medicine Iboga is the best plant medicine for addiction recovery?
Yeah, right. Central nervous system regulation, like hands down. Like, and I'm saying this as a person who I got sober through ayahuasca. I mean, my last major big drug binge was within 90 days of sitting in Aya. And I didn't go to Aya because I was like, I need to get sober or I need to have a spiritual practice. It was like, my brain is just so not right. There's something wrong with me. I need help. I know it has to do with my family of origin. I just need help. Fix me. Like very, Western symptomatic, like just take this symptom and make it go away. What that what that journey showed me, and then when I started to be of service, is that, the alkaloids in Iboga are in a category unto themselves. You take things like ayahuasca, Wachuma San Pedro, peyote, MDA, MDMA, LSD, CB2, psilocybin, ketamine, all these things that are being used in therapeutic modalities. And that's questionable even like how they're being promoted, because there's a huge disconnect from like what people think those medicines do versus how they actually work in the body. But for purposes of simplification here, I can say that for many of us that are dealing with complex trauma, our ability to regulate our nervous system while being able to witness our trauma and let the denial and dismissal system come down so that we can actually start to have an intimate relationship with our past, that regulation can be very difficult for people in the other medicines. And that has to do with the way those medicines operate at a neurological level and what happens in the physiology of the body. So for a lot of people, they can become dysregulated, panic, and have a lot of anxiety as they come into conscious contact with their life experience. What is bizarre about Iboga, and no one can explain this, and I don't know if science will ever be able to explain this, is that the nervous system regulates while we have very clear vision of what we've lived through. And so there's no panic while there is an ability to actually feel the feelings that are connected to the trauma. It's really bizarre. In the literature, they will refer to this as the objective observer phenomenon in Iboga. I say, like, this is God at work, and this is a very loving plant entity that ultimately wants to be with us as a support system as we witness the things that we've lived through, and we give ourselves permission to feel all the feelings that come along with that experience, so that we have more space in our body to love ourselves and enjoy our life. When we're really trapped in the cycle of trauma and abuse, it's really hard to enjoy ourselves, really hard to enjoy our body. There's a lot of anxiety and a lot of cognitive dissonance, sleep issues, other health issues. So what I see with Iboga, different than other plants, is its ability to change our orientation to our trauma very quickly, enable us to start to process those feelings, and to have a regulated nervous system. And then there's all this stuff like it's SSRI, so it has anti-anxiety and antidepressant qualities. There's all that pharmacological stuff as well. But if we just talk about like what is needed to deal with trauma, is like we have to witness our trauma, not deny it, not dismiss it, feel it, and then have a support system around us to be able to live an enjoyable life. And that plant seems to be exceptionally efficient and exceptionally supportive in helping people go through that process.
Thank you. And with that, let's take another break and listen to one of our commercial sponsors here at UK Health Radio. You're listening to Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, and we're interviewing health and wellness coach Kevin Farr about integrating Iboga and the 12-step process. So Kevin Farr, whenever I do medical intuitive readings on addicts, what I find is that the addictions really damage our bodies, right? These addictions damage our brain, they damage our kidneys, they damage our heart, they damage our liver, and can really shut down our whole physiological process. How at the Lyos Center are you all being careful that that it's safe for addicts to engage with the Iboga plant medicine?
Oof. Yeah, this is a conversation that Darren and I have all the time. It's a complex one. In Lyos and GMP, we have slightly nuanced ways that we work with this. And so I'll say at GMP's level, there's the intake form, and then there's the screening through medical intuitive, right? And that's the stage gauge, right? Let's have a profile of what's going on with the person. And as I like to say to D, let's outsource to God some insights about what's going on with people, so that we as practitioners can understand, one, how to create the right space to be of support for them, two, what their stuff might be coming up, and three, is it safe for them to go through with sitting. And then the final stage gate is to ensure that there's no allergies or anything that gets missed in that process. GMP provides a small dose of the medicine before a full ceremonial sit, just to make sure it's metabolized, right? So those are the stage gates. What Lyos has done, because our population is even more at risk, in the sense that, like, we have people coming through with all kinds of issues, right? Work addiction, sex addiction, sometimes addiction to anxiety and depression. There's a lot of different flavors. There's also like the hardcore drug addict who's been 30 years on heroin, 20 years on a benzodiazepine. So we have a mix of what I like to call like science and magic, you know? So sometimes, our protocol is connected to GMP. Like, you will have done some screening for GMP, and then we're going to work with someone in a ceremony. Sometimes they're coming directly from our referral network, and our system is referral only. You can't just come and sit in a ceremony. There's no open ceremonies. So when people come through, we have what I like to call like a mixture of magic and science. We have trauma-informed therapists that are also trained in plant medicine that help us with intake. There's a lot of prayer and ritual and conversation between the intake group around what we're witnessing and sensing, and a lot of prayer into higher power of what's going on with the person. If the person has reported certain medical conditions, we have them go get screened for that. Lyos does not provide that screening. An example of this is needing to be able to get some stuff tested with heart and brain if someone has had a history of brain trauma, and some stuff going on with heart conditions. So there's things that we refer out to, so that there's information gathered. The final decision about someone sitting and what is needed all come through prayer, and it comes through people praying together, and people and talking, and then ensuring that we as the practitioners have clarity in our connection with nature, our connection with the plant, and clarity in the profile that's come through the assessment that we're doing. So I would say in our kind of subgroup, we have that additional layer of medical screening, and we especially with addicts, we really focus on pharmacology and what we call readiness and willingness. Readiness and willingness are part of the trauma index that we profile people with. And that trauma index gives us an understanding of where's their body at in terms of stability, which is the readiness part, right? If they're dealing with a lot of complex trauma, where's their body at? And the willingness is, where's somebody at in terms of what they're willing to look at and explore in ceremony. The goal is to really create a safe space so people can deal with their trauma, and to avoid anything that would create an unstable re-traumatizing event. So us knowing where people are at in their experience and their mental model really helps us understand how to create a safe space. And then we follow the same process at GMP, is that once we have that understanding of the safe space, what they need, what tools we want to provide, there's always a small amount of medicine that's provided to make sure that there's no allergic reaction, and that people are safe to sit. But we are not, both GMP and Lyos, we are not a medical process. Like the being in a medical room hooked up to a heart rate monitor, those things are great for people that need that. In our experience, what is very important in these medicine ceremonies, and I'll say this regardless of whatever medicine people are working with, is nature. These plants are alive, they're intelligent, they come from nature. We should be in with nature when we're working with them. That is not a medical experience, and all the technology and all the other stuff, it really disconnects us from the natural vibrations and the natural rhythms that come from being in nature. So though we have the types of screening and safety protocols ahead of the ceremony space is literally the practitioners, the beautiful music, nature, simple, spiritual process.
Great explanation. Now, we're talking here about how to integrate the plant medicine Iboga with the 12-step process. And as you know, there are 12 steps. I'm curious from your experience, because somebody who's listening to this may be stuck in one of the 12 steps. Are there any of the steps in particular that you feel that Iboga helps the most with?
Wow, Catherine. You know, what's interesting is we just I'm in a 12-step community. My primary program is a program based on growing up in alcoholic and dysfunctional homes, and that program is a spiritual program based on action coming from love. And we just started a private closed meeting of people in this program that also work with plant medicines. And this is one of the things that we talk about, is how does medicine work integrate with each of the steps. And so it was actually a topic that we talked about last night at a meeting. And what I can share with you is that that is dependent on what is going on with the person that's coming in to sit. Medicine is going to meet us where we're at. It's just like a therapist. It's like a good friend. You know, we can't take people into understandings that they're not ready for, nor can I be taken into an understanding that I'm not ready for. So what I find is that, particularly with Iboga, is this sense of meeting us exactly where we are. So for us, when it comes to what step is it most effective for, what's interesting is that we have clients that have no experience with 12-step, and we have clients that are very experienced in 12-step. As we take them through the preparation and intake process, there's some level of step working that's being done, whether they're experienced or they're inexperienced. For someone who is struggling with a sense of higher power, step one may be like where they're at, right? And that's basically what's happening is that they have time in recovery, but they're really struggling to let go to a higher power or define a higher power by their own description. And they're maybe locked into religious conditioning or experiences that they had in different spiritual communities, or assumptions they have about a God needing to be like some man that's telling them what they're like. You know, they might have all those stories. Somebody else coming through might have a lot of challenges being able to clearly accept that they've been a victim. And so that's going to be more step 4 stuff, right? For other people, I being one of them, I really struggled with defects of character. That was really hard for me. So a lot of work for a period of time was coming into awareness over defects of character, right? So this is like 6, 7, 8, making amends, right? So it depends on where we're at and what's going on in our life in terms of how the medicine is going to meet us. What I can say for in kind of at a general level is that we find that we most frequently tend to work with step 4 and conscious contact with a higher power most frequently. And that's just kind of what happens with clients when they're coming through. And my assumption of why the plant is so effective for that, and why that occurs so much, is that when we're dealing with trauma, to survive it, we have to disassociate and deny it for a period of time. It's an amazing feature of the human mind, right? What comes with that is what one of my therapists referred to as ruthless self-reliance. Like, I'll cut my own knees off to take care of myself because I have to protect myself, right? That those two phenomenons of denial mixed with like, I have to take care of myself, I'm the only one that can protect myself, it cuts us off from connection with other people. It cuts us off from connection with nature. It cuts us off from the connection that there's this amazing, ineffable, phenomenological thing that we're in, which is life. Like, what a miracle, and how mysterious it is. So my sense in looking at myself and other people that come through our work and other people that I've worked with in different spiritual communities and 12-step communities is that the medicine is really efficient with, we can look at things and trust that this is so hard to say sometimes, like that there's a reason that we go through this trauma. And that reason may not even be clear to us, but that there's something happening in this great mystery of nature, in this highly complex system where every little thing that happens has a purpose and a point. Mm-hmm. And so the medicine seems to be really great with us inventorying, as we say in 12-step, looking at what's happened and connecting into a higher power of our definition. So I'd say it can meet you wherever you're at, those two things seem to be pretty consistent with our clientele coming through.
So Kevin Farr, at the Lyos Center, you all are integrating the plant medicine Iboga with the 12-step recovery process. And there, again, as we talked about, there's 12-step groups literally all over the world. Do you see yourselves as the forerunner of by integrating the plant medicine with the 12-step process? Do you anticipate that your program will be emulated or copied around the world?
Ooh. The part of me that wants to be like, yes, we made a really cool thing, is like, yes, but and at the same time, it's something that Darren and I talk about a lot. Is like, I think what's most important for us right now is that GMP be replicated. Like the system of having pre-care and aftercare for medicine, like that's foremost, because that's so lacking. And all of the money going into the industry and all of the commercialization around it, it's one, there's deceiving information that's coming out. People don't get pre-care and they don't get aftercare, and they spin out, and there's all kinds of problems with that. So I'd say level one is would love to see the model that Darren and Global Nurture Project and Iboga Therapy created, that makes its way into just the medicine and the therapeutic community, so that there's more understanding of pre-care and aftercare. Now, with regards to wanting to see more 12-step and involved and evolve, there's definitely a desire that there be more openness in the 12-step community to plant medicine work. It's highly controversial. And also I understand why, because it's not for everybody, right? So there's some, I have some trepidation about it, just like everybody replicate the model, because I don't think it's for everybody. And I do also see that the combination of really good trauma-informed support, really good understanding of how to take care of the mind, body, and spirit, an understanding of a regular spiritual practice, of which plant medicine can be part of that, and good 12-step work, people really excel. Like it's a noticeable difference, right? And I think that people can have, and I see people have that experience without necessarily the 12 steps. And what's unique about the 12 steps is its accessibility. It's so practical. It's not esoteric in the sense that you look at a lot of modalities that exist out there that are popularized. Let's just take something like gene keys and human design, right? There's practicality to it, but it also has a type of generality to make it accessible. That makes it hard to apply some of those things if we don't intuitively understand what's being communicated. It's the same thing like reading Sufism in like Islam or some other type of mysticism, right? So 12-step is really, really, really practical. So would I love to see a world where people have practical tools for sane living, combined with good access to health and wellness practitioners that understand trauma, that understand addiction, and a deep understanding of how plants can nourish them? My goodness, like sign me up for that world. And I would love to see more of that.
Yeah. Kevin Farr, you've been listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 best-selling author. And I do the medical intuitive readings for Darren McBratney at the Global Nurture Project. You've been listening. You can find out more about me and my work at CatherineCarrigan.com and UnlimitedEnergyNow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Our guest today has been health and wellness coach Kevin Farr. You can find out more about Kevin Farr and his wonderful work at lovealchemyscience.com and lyoscenter.com. That's LYOS center.com. And when you integrate the 12-step with plant medicine, miracles occur. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.